Welcome back to another episode of Brian's Deductions, brought to you by way of What's the Play Productions. My name is Brian, and this is the Week 1 preview for the NFL season. If this is your first time, I'd like to say thank you for clicking on this video. Hopefully you find this enjoyable. If you're returning, I also appreciate you as well, and I thank you again for deciding to spend some of your time listening to this. So for this preview, we're going to start with my top 5 games of the week. Give you a little bit of analysis, not try to hit y'all too much with stats today, and then from there we'll do a quick look around the league, and that should be it for the preview this week. So we're going to start with the first game of the week, opening kickoff on Thursday night between the Ravens and the Chiefs. So for this game, I think there are a couple of key factors that will be crucial in determining who wins this game. The first one I would say is red zone efficiency. In the two matchups that these teams have had since Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes have been quarterback in the regular season, both teams obviously split a game. The Chiefs have been pretty effective in both. Now, in the win that they had 3 red zone trips and scored a touchdown every time. While in the loss, they had 1 trip to the red zone and scored that one time. Now, they also had big plays throughout the game, so it wasn't just like they only scored 10 points in that game where they only had 1 red zone trip, but they were pretty efficient nevertheless. Meanwhile, for the Ravens, it was a little bit different, where when they won, they scored 4 touchdowns and 4 trips in the red zone, while when they lost, they only had a touchdown and a field goal in 4 trips. So they only scored 2 times out of the 4 times they went down there. And then, of course, in last year's playoffs, Chiefs made 3 trips to the red zone, scored 2 touchdowns, while the Ravens took 1 trip and came up empty. So that was part of the big thing in last year's game. I do think going into this year, especially on Baltimore's side, it'll be interesting to see how they attack the red zone game, even if say Mark Andrews isn't able to play again this year like he was unable to in the playoffs because he was out for the year with that injury after the hip drop tackle. It's going to be interesting to see because they did acquire Derrick Henry in the offseason, so it'll be interesting to see what that dynamic looks like between him and Lamar Jackson, especially come red zone time. Because you have two threats in the run game that you have to account for. So it'll definitely be interesting to see what they do coming out. You also have a guy like Zay Flowers who could be very, very lethal, whether it's on like jet sweeps. I don't know if you would use a reverse in the red zone, but like just finding ways to get the ball in his hands and let him make plays. So it'll be interesting to see how the Ravens attack that, not only in this game, but just throughout the season. And then, obviously, on the Chiefs side, I mean, you got Patrick Mahomes to Travis Kelce. That's almost automatic in the red zone. You have a guy in Isaiah Pacheco who was pretty effective running the football as well. And Rashee Rice as well, who's been kind of like that underneath threat, who is the one guy that you probably trust the most in, say, intermediate routes. They did just re-signed Juju Smith-Schuster, who was also pretty key in the red zone in their 2022 season, I want to say. So they have the pieces to be effective at getting in the red zone and kind of clean up maybe what might have been ailing them a little bit last year in terms of the passing game. So that'll be interesting to see. The other key battle would be the turnover battle. As we saw in the playoffs, the Ravens turned the ball over 3 times, while Kansas City was flawless offensively in terms of keeping the ball out of harm's way. So, and we've also seen in the regular season game that the Chiefs did lose. There was a crucial turnover late in the game where there was a Larry fumbled the football. So even though when you look at the stats, the turnover margin is even in terms of regular season games, crucial turnovers, especially like the one we just said with Clyde, and then obviously the ones in the playoffs, with Lamar throwing a couple. I think he threw one in the red zone, if I'm not in the one red zone trip they made. So that's another obviously crucial play. Um, so yeah, the biggest thing had been like timely turnovers or timely takeaways, if you want to, since we got to give the defensive credit here. Timely takeaways on both sides of this rivalry. So the turnover battle will be very crucial in this game. I'm looking at this game. It's hard to bet against Patrick Mahomes in general, but I think not only is this a potential statement game for Baltimore, I think this is, even though it's not the playoffs, I think it's the chance for Lamar to maybe exercise some demons, so to speak. I think he has a great game. I think he scores a late touchdown to kind of put the game away, so to speak. Probably, I'll say if almost like on a college football thing, fake jet sweep kind of power pipe play, to help the Ravens pull away late in the fourth quarter. So for that game, I have the Ravens winning 34-24. All right, so we will move to the next game, which will be happening on Friday night. It's in Brazil, if I'm not mistaken. If I have the location wrong, I apologize. That game will be going down between the Packers and the Eagles. So one of the big questions in this game is which new backfield tandem will perform better than the other. So for the Packers, obviously you have Jordan Love, who just came off a magnificent second half of football, and obviously had a great playoff debut against Dallas. He started off well against the 49ers, but had a tough second half. But I think that will, like any great player, will motivate him to be better this year. So obviously this is his second full year starting, so it'll be interesting to see if he continues that trajectory or if there's a little bit of a sophomore slump, so to speak. Even though this is his fourth year in the league, I believe, but you get the point. And then for the Packers, they signed Josh Jacobs in the offseason. He had a little bit of a down year last year, but I think part of that was O-line play, part of that was scheme with Josh McDaniels and things of that nature, because as you saw, once Antonio Pierce became the interim head coach for the Raiders, they did a lot more. They seemed to be able to get the ball to Devontae Adams more. They were able to run a lot more effectively with Josh Jacobs. So, seeing Josh Jacobs behind a more improved offensive line in Green Bay and with a great play caller like Matt LaFleur I think he'll have a bounce back year for sure. On Philly side, obviously you have Jalen Hurts, who a couple years ago had a MVP candidate-like season, took his team to the Super Bowl, had arguably a Super Bowl MVP-worthy performance, but of course, never got a chance to see the ball again after James Bradbury got called for defensive holding. Had a regression. He regressed a little bit last season. So it'll be interesting to see with now Kellen Moore as the play caller if we see the Jalen Hurts of a couple years ago, if we see another offensive situation this year that was similar to last. Then obviously, like the Packers, the Eagles also signed a big ticket running back in Saquon Barkley, who also kind of had a little bit of a down year last year, but I think part of that was obviously playing behind a bad line. Part of it was, injuries and things of that nature. So I think Saquon will look better behind a more improved offensive line as well. It also will be interesting to see if the tush push is still a thing in Philly, just because obviously the guy that helped make it happen in Jason Kelce is no longer there as he is retired. So it'll be interesting to see if I think they'll still try to use it just to see if it works, but if it starts getting stopped, I'm sure Philly may be looking for other options. But again, when you have Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley in the backfield, I mean, that's not a bad read option / short yardage component to use. So it'll definitely be interesting to see who plays better in that situation, but I think both backfields will look very very potent this season. So that'll definitely be a big thing for sure. And then another big question, obviously, both teams hired new defensive coordinators. The Packers hired Jeff Hafley from Boston College, while the Eagles hired Vic Fangio. So the question is, how will the defenses look this year, especially in this game, considering how the Eagles looked last year, defensively, especially in the pass game. It's going to be interesting to see how Vic Fangio uses his scheme. It's also going to be interesting to see who they put out there on the field, because you see they drafted guys like Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean in the draft. But you also still have, obviously, Darius Slay and James Bradbury that are still there. You also have Keely Ringo, who was drafted. So it'll be interesting to see what personnel they use. It also will be interesting to see if Vic Fangio's cover 4 scheme will help in that regard. On the Packers side, I think it's just a question of will they continue to improve from last year, because they weren't too bad in points per game or yards per game allowed. So I think the biggest thing is just continuing to improve. Also, you get a guy, and also I think getting a guy like Xavier McKinney will be huge for them, because he's a guy that's going to be around the football a lot, and he's also a guy that is very potent taking the football away. So it'll be interesting to see what he looks like in Jeff Hafley's defense. But I definitely think that was a very smart addition by the Packers. So it'd be interesting to see how he fares this year as well. So for this game, I think that this is a game where both teams may start off a little slow, but in the second half it'll start to pick up a bit. I think Jordan Love fires a couple of touchdowns in the second half, and I think that the Packers walk away with the win here, 24-20. All right, to our third game, we now have a 4:25 matchup on Sunday between the Cowboys and the Browns. I think the biggest question everybody's going to have is how CeeDee Lamb will look, given that he held out and didn't get to practice as much going into the season. It seems like they've ramped up his workload pretty quickly over these last few days, so it may be a situation where he's fine, and it's just all about conditioning and making sure he's good to go. But that's definitely going to be a big part. He's definitely going to be the biggest part of the offense. And obviously, I'm not sure if he's out, but if Denzel Ward is out with a concussion, then it will be very. Then at that point, it becomes even more important for CeeDee Lamb to look the way he's looked the last few years, because I don't know if there's any DB on that team outside of Denzel Ward that could probably. Even then, he probably would still need safety help, but I don't think you can put anybody. Obviously, you can't put that many people on an island with CeeDee Lamb. So him looking 100% and looking like the guy that just got paid the big bucks, which he absolutely deserved, will be interesting to see. Another big question with the loss of Tony Pollard to the Titans is how Dallas's running game will fare. They decided to reunite with Ezekiel Elliott in the offseason. They also signed Dalvin Cook about, I want to say, a week ago, maybe a few days ago. And they also have a guy in-house, Enrico Dowdle, who's still there, along with Deuce Vaughn. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I think Ezekiel and Dalvin still have some tread on their tires, even though they may be past their prime at this point. But the effectiveness of Dallas's running game will definitely mean something in this game, given the defense that they're playing against. Um, for sure, because if they're able to because if Cleveland is able to make them one-dimensional, then Myles Garrett and those guys get to hunt, and that could spell a long day for Dallas. So this is a big point for this game, but I think it's a season-long thing as well, because if Dallas is basically one-dimensional going into games, it's already more scary, because then at that point, if you're a defense, it's one of those things where it's take CD away, don't really have to stack the box if you're not effective running the football, and you can devote more resources to the other players, towards guarding the other receivers and tight ends, and making sure you can get after Dak Prescott. So definitely will be interesting to see how effective Dallas's running game is, especially in this game. Like the previous games we talked about, I think the turnover battle is another big thing. Last year, Cowboys were tied for fifth in turnover margin. Surprisingly, while the Browns were tied for 25th in turnover margin, they were tied for fifth in takeaways. So this is a game where, again, if that running game is not effective, Dallas probably could be had. The Browns, we were talking about last year, having a Super Bowl caliber defense. So it's definitely going to be important to make sure that you don't. Definitely going to be important for Dallas not to give the ball away. Probably going on establish drives, establish time of possession, and doing things of that nature for sure. And I think that takes us to what is probably the biggest question of this game, and maybe the biggest question of the season, given how you feel about Cleveland. Is the elite version of Deshaun Watson gone forever? He had flashes in his games last year when you watched, like for example, the game against the Ravens where they came back and won 33-31. I want to say. So there have been flashes, but obviously it hasn't been as consistent ever since he left Houston. This is his third year in Kevin Stefanski's system, so kind of almost like if you try to treat it like a rookie QB trajectory. You know, you had the first year, you hope that you show some promise. Second year, you hope to see them continue to build, and the third year is when you hope that they have their kind of breakout season. So this is his third season. You hope that if you're a Browns fan, you hope that he ascends back to that elite level, because if you get that elite level play, not only does that make your team a Super Bowl contender for sure, and probably potentially the favorites, even with the Chiefs being back-to-back champions. But it also justifies the trade and the contract that you made, the trade with the Texans that you made that is looking very one-sided right now, and the contract that you gave him, which is fully guaranteed over the next few years. So this will definitely be an interesting game to watch, especially given that it's a primetime slot. So we'll definitely get to see early what version of Deshaun Watson people will come to expect this season. So for this game, I think that this is going to be tightly contested. I think kind of like the other games, I think this is a defensive battle early, and I think both offenses start to get it going late. But for this game, I think that the Browns will enjoy home cooking, and they find a way to win 24-21. All right, so now we move to the Sunday night game. We have the Rams versus the Lions. This analysis will be a little bit more Lion-centric, just because with the Rams, their situation is more a question of how they'll look post Aaron Donald on both sides. Well, more so on the defensive side, but just as a cohesive locker room. I mean, you still have Matthew Stafford, you have Cooper Kupp, you have Puka, you have guys that have been there. So it's not a complete leadership hit, but obviously when you have a Titan like Aaron Donald that is leaving the building, that's very big shoes to fill for any team. So it'll be, like I said, that'll be more of a season-long thing than just a game one situation. So with the Rams, I think we all expect them to look potent offensively and be competitive defensively as well. But again, the loss of Aaron Donald, we'll see. I think we'll have an answer on not how impactful it is, but how well they're able to fill that gap, so to speak, as the season goes on. So on Detroit's side, the biggest question is how they'll handle expectations now that they are the hunted and no longer the hunters. So obviously Detroit finished in the NFC Championship game last year. They seem to be the favorite they seem to be a lot of people's favorite out of the NFC to make it to the Super Bowl, even over the reigning NFC champions and the San Francisco 49ers. Lions Chiefs seems to be the hot pick that I've seen a lot of people make this season. So again, Detroit has massive expectations this year. It will be interesting to see what they do. Obviously, they got a lot of contributors on the offensive side of the ball. I think that obviously they have to make some improvements defensively in order to truly be contenders. But I believe that Aaron Glenn and the rest of that staff will find a way to improve defensively. And Dan Campbell is a heck of a coach. So I think that he'll be able to have his guys. I believe that he'll have his guys ready. I believe that he'll continue to keep his team from being complacent, and obviously, kind of having that underdog mentality. And obviously, when you have guys like Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown who have been overlooked, so to speak, and still kind of playing with the chips on their shoulders and finding ways to stay motivated, I think that'll carry over to the rest of the team. So I guess, the question may already be answered, but a big game like this, playoff rematch against the Rams, definitely would be a stage to show that they are ready to handle the lofty expectations being thrown their way. Other key point for me would probably be the red zone battle, as we saw in the playoffs. In a win that was 24-23, the biggest difference was in the red zone, as the Rams had 3 trips, scored 3 field goals, while the Lions had 3 trips and scored 3 touchdowns. So the red zone battle will be a key point here. And for this game, I think that, again, as I've been saying, I think the Lions take advantage of this matchup and they say, make a statement early that they're ready for the expectations that are being lofted their way, and I have them winning 30-24. All right, so the final game of the top 5 this week will be the Monday Night Football game between the Jets and the 49ers. The biggest question out of this game for sure is how the Jets' offense will look with Aaron Rodgers. We all hope that Aaron Rodgers is able to play more than 4 plays this season. Hopefully able to play all 17 games if possible. Even without Aaron Rodgers last year, Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson were still able to have pretty good seasons by their standards, given the fact that, again, Aaron Rodgers wasn't there. So it will be interesting to see how they look for sure going forward. Especially, and I think having a matchup like the 49ers, who have one of the better defenses in the league, is a good test right out the gate to see how they'll fare. So That's a great matchup for sure. Obviously, on the 49ers side, the question is if they will be firing on all cylinders given the number of holdouts they had. Now, Trent Williams, I'm sure we expect him to be perfectly fine. Again, kind of like the CD thing. I think it's just a matter of conditioning, but I don't think anybody's worried about Trent Williams. Brandon Ayuk, I mean, he's been in the offense, so I don't think it's something where he's got to, like, where it's going to take him too long to pick things up. Again, it's just another conditioning situation, just kind of seeing what he looks like. Debo, of course, coming off I believe it was a hamstring. If it wasn't, I apologize. But coming off the injury in the Super Bowl, it's going to be interesting to see how he looks, but I believe that he'll be ready to go as well. And Brock Purdy's sophomore season, in terms of kind of like Jordan Love, where like you're coming into your own with the full season. So will be interesting to see how he looks this year. Now the teams will have a little bit more film on him. And then the other point, which may not be a really key point, given that Aaron Rodgers is back, but was an interesting stat that I saw. The 49ers were first in red zone scoring percentage last year at 68%, while the Jets were dead last in red zone scoring percentage with only 32.4%. So that will probably be a key element of the game, but that was just an interesting stat that I saw earlier today, and I thought that would be an interesting thing to talk about. So for this game, I think this will definitely be closely contested. I think the Jets will definitely be looking to make a statement in this game, but for this one, I have the 49ers winning 31-23. All right, so now that we have gone through the top five, we will now go around the league. I will give a little bit of analysis on the rest of the games, but for the most part, we're just going to give score predictions, and then that'll be about it for this. All right, so the first game we'll talk about is the Cardinals and the Bills. I think this has the potential to be the highest scoring matchup of the week. You have two great stud quarterbacks in Josh Allen and Kyler Murray. Also get to see Marvin Harrison Jr. for his first game. It'll be interesting to see how Josh Allen looks now that Stephon Diggs is not his number one receiver. But a lot of people seem to be very high on Khalil Shakir. Also will be interesting to see how Keon Coleman looks. Obviously you got Dalton Kincaid coming back this year, so you have weapons, you have people that you can definitely get the ball to. On the Cardinal side, obviously you still got James Conner in that backfield. You got Marvin, like we said. You got Trey McBride at tight end, and you have Michael Wilson's not their number. I can't remember who the other receiver is right now. JG, if you're seeing this, I'm sorry. Yeah, so you have McBride, you have Connor, you have MHJ. Obviously, you have Kyler himself who can make plays. So this will be another interesting matchup, but I think that this will be a high-scoring game. And I think, the Bills enjoy home cooking. I think that Josh Allen has 3 to 4 total touchdowns, depending on how the game goes. And I have the Bills winning 34-31. So for the next game, we have the Panthers and the Saints. This one I think will be a lot more low scoring. I think the Saints will make it to the red zone early and often. The question will just be if they cash in or if they end up having to settle for field goals. For me, I think their kicker will be pretty busy this day and hit 4 field goals. And I think that ends up being the difference in the game as the Saints end up winning 19-13. Moving to another divisional matchup, we have the Texans and the Colts. We have the return of Anthony Richardson Jr. going against a C.J. Stroud-led offense that just acquired the aforementioned Stephon Diggs that we talked about. I think that this has the potential to be a high-scoring game as well. I think While I don't think the Texans will be the '07 Patriots, I do think that Stroud will have a field day, and he'll probably, yeah, I think he throws a touchdown I think he throws a touchdown each to Diggs, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell if Tank Dell is healthy. If not Tank, then maybe Dalton Schultz. But he throws 3 touchdown passes to 3 different receivers. And I think they find a way to win that game 30-22. Also in that game, I think that the Colts make a late push to come back from down 2 scores, which is why they have 22. But unfortunately, they're unable to score a touchdown late to tie the game and then go for 2. So that's why I have it at 30-22. Okay. Next game we have the Jaguars and the Dolphins. For this one, kind of like the Bills and the Cardinals, it definitely has a chance to be a high-scoring game. I think that for this one, this is definitely a toss-up, depending on how you feel about it. I think both quarterbacks perform well, but I think the difference in this game is going to be Josh Allen, the edge rusher for the Jaguars, because I feel like he's the biggest difference maker on the defense, on either team's defense, and I think that he'll make a couple of plays against Tua, and he may make one particularly late where he gets a sack fumble on Tua, and that ends up being the game. For this one, I have the Jaguars winning 28-24, but this is one of those games where I may wake up on Sunday and change my prediction. Now, of course, this is on camera. This is going to be the prediction, but yeah, this game could go either way for sure. Next game, I have the Vikings and the Giants. So for this one, I feel like this one is going to be on the lower scoring side, kind of like the Saints and the Panthers. I think I probably would have gave the Vikings a few more points if J.J. McCarthy was playing and not Sam Darnold. I know that sounds crazy, but it doesn't. But Sam Darnold hasn't inspired a lot of confidence in teams in a minute. I think Justin Jefferson has a nice game, though. I think they're able to get him the ball early and often. I think this is a game where the Giants will struggle early and often, not only because, you're working in new guys and things of that nature, but you're playing against a Brian Flores defense, and usually teams do not fare well against him, especially teams with quarterbacks that aren't really good against pressure. So I think that the Giants struggle offensively. I think that their defense keeps them in it for the most of the game. I think that, again, with Darnold being there, I think that the Vikings struggle a little early, but I think they find a way to score a touchdown. They find a way to start getting things going in the second half, and then they score a touchdown late to grab the lead. And I think they hold on to win over. I think the Vikings hold on to win over the Giants 20-13. For the Patriots and the Bengals, I think this might be another potential low-scoring game. You got Jacoby Brissett and you have Joe Burrow. It's going to be interesting to see how Jamar Chase looks. Again, the recurring theme of receivers holding out and things of that nature. So this could be a game where Cincinnati doesn't produce at the level that we expect them to. But I think this just ends up being a game where Cincinnati, if nothing else, Cincinnati probably relies on their defense. Outside of Ramondre Stevenson, Pop Douglas, and Jalen Polk and a couple of players, the Patriots don't have that many weapons offensively that scare you. So I think this might be a situation where Aruma, I believe I pronounced his name wrong. I apologize. But the Bengals defensive coordinator, kind of like Brian Flores in the previous game, dials up the pressure early and often, and probably plays a lot of man coverage and says, if y'all beat us, you beat us. But probably going to try to take away the run very early in this game. So for this one, I have the Bengals winning 23-10. It's possible that they may score more than that, but just again the question on how effective Chase will be is what led me to that score. Next game we have the Steelers and the Falcons. So we have two quarterbacks in Kirk Cousins and Russell Wilson, who are starting over in new cities after being in Minnesota and Denver respectively. I think this is another low scoring game. I think this is another defensive battle. Russell Wilson doesn't inspire enough confidence in me. Well, the combination of Russell Wilson and Arthur Smith, just in this game specifically, doesn't inspire enough confidence in me. The Falcons, I mean, we'll see how they look offensively. I think that having Kirk will definitely help unlock a couple of players, especially Kyle Pitts. But we have to see. But we have to see how they look first before, obviously, we can fully state that. So that's another one where it's like, we'll see what happens. For all I know, this could end up being the game where like it ends up being like 31-30. But I think this one stays on the lower scoring side, and I think the Falcons win 16-13 on a field goal by Younghoe Koo to end it in regulation. At the end of regulation. All right, we have the Titans and the Bears next. The debut of Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, and other fellow players. The first game of Will Levis's sophomore season as well. I think that this will be a game where sneakily it will feel like a defensive battle, but I think it'll be one of those things where both teams are able to move the ball effectively. It just comes down to how effective they are red zone wise, who takes care of the ball for sure, and I think this is more so a game where you ask, coming away from it, if the Bears, basically I think the Bears dictate how this game goes. I think if Caleb and the offense are poised, composed, keep the ball out of harm's way, they'll be fine. If not, if they're jittery and they don't play as well, I think this could be a game for the Titans to steal. So for this game, I have the Bears winning 23-14. I have Caleb scoring. I have Caleb throwing a touchdown to DJ Moore, and I have him rushing for a touchdown as well. I think Will Levis also throws a couple of touchdowns as well. It's possible that maybe one of those touchdowns that the Titans scores is a Tony Pollard rushing touchdown, but for now I will say that Will Levis throws one touchdown to DeAndre Hopkins, and he throws one touchdown to Tajay Spears. All right, so the next game, we have the Broncos and the Seahawks in what will be the debut for Bo Nix, if I'm not mistaken. For this game, I definitely think it'll be closely contested. I think Mike McDonald will get after Bo Nix for sure. See how he responds to pressure, similarly to what we've been saying about the Bengals and the Giants games. I think that this game will maybe be leaning more towards low scoring than high scoring, but I don't think that I wouldn't be surprised if both offenses found a way to score, given that Sean Payton is coaching for the Broncos, and obviously we know what Geno Smith has been able to do with DK Metcalf, Kenneth Walker III. DK Metcalf, Kenneth Walker III, and Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett, obviously, and JSN, Jack Smith-Njigba, who will probably have a much better sophomore season. For this game, I have the Seahawks winning 21-19. over Denver. I think that Denver scores late and just misses the 2-point conversion, which is why it's 21-19. But kind of like this may be more like the Steelers Falcons one, where I'm kind of semi solidified in my pick to where I'm not switching my pick at the like I might with the Jags and the Dolphins. But again, this is one that could probably go either way. Another game that could probably go either way is the final divisional matchup of the week, which is the Raiders and the Chargers. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh's return to the NFL. For this game, it will be funny because this will probably be like a home game for the Raiders, given how much the Raiders are revered in Los Angeles. I think that this would definitely be more low scoring though, just based on philosophy. I think Gardner Minshew will have moments, but I don't think we'll see too many explosive plays from the Raiders. And then on the Chargers side, I think that Jim Harbaugh will be more of a ground and pound approach. So I think they'll be more focused on time of possession and making sure that they are efficient with their drive. So for this game, I have the Chargers winning 17-16 with Justin Herbert leading the Chargers on a 2-minute drive and getting a field goal with about 30 seconds left on the clock. So the Raiders need the ball back and have a chance to win, but Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, and the rest of the Chargers defense lock in and get the stop to get their first win of the season and get Jim Harbaugh his first win in his return to the NFL. And finally, we have the Commanders and the Buccaneers. Another debut here for Jaden Daniels. I think that this is a game, again, kind of like I've been saying, I think both teams defensively do pretty well. I could very easily see a situation where the Commanders are leading at halftime or even tied. But I think just in the second half, I think that the Buccaneers will, between Todd Bowles' defensive genius, going against a rookie quarterback in Jaden Daniels and going against that Cliff Kingsbury offense, and Baker Mayfield just doing what he seems to always do in the second half, which is just go out there and ball out. I think he throws 2 touchdowns in the second half. I think Rachaad White probably scores a touchdown as well, whether that's receiving one of Baker's passes or running or getting one on the ground. For this one, I have the Buccaneers winning 27-16. But I will say that I would not be completely surprised if the Commanders win, especially if they're able to win the turnover battle. Because Baker can be had at times, but I think that Baker has a great second half, and that is why I'm giving the Buccaneers the win in this one. All right, so that was the Week 1 NFL preview. Courtesy of Brian's Deductions. Hope you enjoyed this content. I appreciate you for checking in, clicking on this video, taking the time. If you've gotten to this point of the video, definitely for sharing your time and being willing to listen and willing to listen to this analysis. If you want to continue to see videos like this from me in the future, just let me know in the comments. Let me know on socials or however you want to reach me. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share with everyone you know. Also, for my What's the Play Productions crew, we will have more videos out soon. There's just been a little bit of technical situations, so that's the only reason why we haven't had a video out in a minute. But you'll still get more. But there will probably be more Brian's Deductions videos to come, and obviously more group stuff that we've been doing. So Just be on the lookout for that. We haven't gone anywhere. We just having some things right now, but but we have some episodes in the tuck that we will hopefully have out within the next couple of weeks once we get everything figured out. So just wanted to say that real quick. Again, thank you all for tuning in for the week 1 episode. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share. And until next time, stay tuned for the next play.